get vaccinated. We don't know what people go through. We don't know people's experiences they've had with past vaccines. We don't know that. And so by mandating that, you're neglecting their opinions in that, and you're neglecting their long-term health by saying you have to get this vaccine. Rather, you should incentivize it, giving discounts on classes, giving discounts on tuition, or even discounts on meal plans and other things to encourage it rather than mandate it. We don't know the long-term effects that this COVID-19 vaccine has. It's only been out for less than a year. It's been distributed. The first vaccine was December 18th. That was the first one distributed. If colleges began to implement vaccine mandates, they're neglecting one's hesitancy, concerns, or opinions about this vaccine. They will neglect potentially the long-term health of an individual. They are more concerned about the now than they are the later. Another, something I want to bring up, y'all said that we said that the FDA didn't approve that. We never said that. We never brought that up in any of our points. The vaccines are been FDA approved. We're not arguing the vaccine. We're arguing that if someone can't come in and mandate that college students should be mandated to get the vaccine because of all these things we have presented. Okay, one thing that I want to ask is, y'all said that cases are higher than what they were last year. Is that true? Can you provide like some statistics to support that? Because I think that the cases are actually lower than what they were last year.
Yeah, for sure. So our information comes from the CDC, and it's a graph of the amount of cases that are averaged per weekly. So this was mentioned in our first speech. In December of 2020, there was an average of 250,000 new cases, and that fell to 64,000 in April 2021. However, the most recent information, which is September of 2021, which was, a month and a half ago, is back up at 164,000. So although it's not as high as the highest peak, it is still more than double what it was at this time last semester.
Right, and that was because of the Delta strain, right? The Delta
It was
strain.
mainly because of the removal of mask mandates. The Delta strain is probably also in effect in there somewhere, but mainly it's because we no longer have to wear masks.
Would you also say maybe that was because like the vaccine, the original vaccine that they had gotten started to wear off, and that's why they needed to get the boosters since, like, you said September. I mean, if they were started to be distributed, let's say around January, February, in 6 months, I mean, that would make sense, right?
Not necessarily, because if we're talking about college campuses, then we have to acknowledge that although the vaccines did come out in January and February, not everyone got their vaccines at that time, especially college students, because we had to wait unless we were medically needing them. So we can't assume that everyone got the vaccine at exactly January, and that 6 months, after 6 months, the vaccine is never effective ever again, because that's not true. We have information from the CDC that states that even though booster shots are cool and we would like them, the original 2 vaccine shots are still pretty good at defending against the strains, and either way, you're still more protected than what you started off with.
Yeah, something else that I kind of want to bring up, we brought up about like forcing that onto an individual with like past experiences, maybe bad experiences with vaccines, and that's why maybe they're hesitant. What would you say to about there being a mandated on that person who's hesitant and doesn't want to take the shot because of what they've seen, and by this mandate you're ignoring it? Would you like anything to say about that?
I think there's 2 answers to that question. First, that person is validated in their opinions and beliefs, but however, we have to take into account that at this point, this is a national problem. Like, this is no longer like, maybe you want to get my flu shot, maybe you don't want to get my flu shot. Like, no, like, this is a problem that needs to be solved because people are dying and people are, college is being impeded. As you mentioned, online classes aren't the best, they kind of suck for us. So we have to create a way so that we don't have to do that anymore. So although, yes, I totally respect that individual's decision to not want to get vaccinated, it's a necessary imposition that must happen to protect the overall health of the entirety of the population. Can we take our 2 minutes of prep? Thank you. Are you ready? All right. So hello, my name is still John Franco, and I will be summarizing and concluding the affirmative arguments. Once again, we'd like to reiterate that although we do, we want to reiterate that it is a choice. The negative is stout in trying to convince you that we are forcing people, but we are not. We are allowing for medical, religious, and online exemptions for those who remain unvaccinated because you can't have your cake and eat it too. We cannot resort to only personal ideals and experience to solve this pandemic, because if that were true, then I too was affected greatly. But I'd rather have to suffer through a small rough patch so the future will be brighter, rather than have what I want now and risk this pandemic continuing longer than it needs to. However, rather than resort to arguing ideals and beliefs, we need to consider the grand scope of all the nation's health in all colleges. Once again, we'd like to reiterate that although we do value and acknowledge evidence centered around one college, it is not reasonable to generalize that info across all colleges. Not every college will apply or mirror other colleges' statistics or vaccine incentives. What we can know across all colleges is that COVID has devastated the community and the culture. Furthermore, we want to reiterate that just like the negative, we respect choice. We want to have the ability for us to choose what way to protect ourselves. However, because the case currently is that we are in the middle of a global pandemic, this is not a regular situation. We are in the middle of a global health crisis. We respect your right to choose. You don't have to get vaccinated, but you will have to stay in online classes. Having a problem with this law during a global pandemic is simply selfish, because you can choose to remain unvaccinated and exercise your right to choose, but you never have the right to risk someone else's right to life. If one person wants to remain unvaccinated and run the risk of catching a serious COVID case, good for them. But that doesn't allow them the right to expose other people to the virus. You are at your own risk and own disposal to risk your health, but not those of other people ever. People who wish to stay fully safe have the full right to do so with the right to life and right to privacy, to do so in public places. Therefore, it is logical to establish that remaining unvaccinated is a right to choice, but one that must be kept isolated. The 14th Amendment, which they mentioned, we agree with. The government should not be allowed to infringe on freedom for no reason. However, something that they failed to notice is that the 14th Amendment does also allow the state that freedoms and rights are not absolute with proper reasoning and interest. The government may in fact temporarily hold these rights. According to the social contract we have with the government, this would mean that every law must pass a test, and these tests are strict scrutiny and rational review. We would simply have to prove that a vaccine mandate is both a compelling and legitimate interest that is both narrowly tailored and rationally related. We argue that public health and safety is a compelling and legitimate interest that is narrowly tailored to a rationally related vaccine mandate that allows for medical, religious, and online exemptions. A lot of the debate revolves around the legality of a mandate, which the negative claims is not supported. However, the affirmative still contends that legal backing does indeed support a potential vaccine mandate. Allow me to walk you through this. We start with Jacobson versus Massachusetts, which revolves around vaccine mandates. Specifically, that an imposition on some modicum of individual liberty when necessitated by a public health concern is allowed. This would be backed up by the implementation on the limitations to the rights to privacy and bodily autonomy that only apply to private medical decisions, and in the cases of Lawrence versus Texas and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, privacy in the bedroom between married couples. This does not apply to vaccine mandates, as according to Cruzan versus Director and Griswold versus Connecticut. A vaccine mandate amidst a national public crisis can still exist and also respect the rights to privacy and bodily autonomy. We continue to argue and contend that the health of all our students is our top priority, because a national problem requires a national solution. We have to take in consideration that although a vaccine mandate might not be likable to all of us, we might not all want this vaccine mandate, but what we do want is for our schools to go back to normal. What we do want is our education to return. What we do want is to continue to be safe and to continue to be healthy. We cannot allow that simply because we do not want to take a shot, we are going to allow the colleges and this pandemic to continue growing and ravaging our communities. We have to take action now so that even though we may suffer a tiny rough patch, in the long run and in the grand scheme of things, things are brighter for us in the future. This is something that we must consider when we talk about applying a national vaccine mandate, which we believe is the winner on an impact calculus of what has better results. The affirmative argues that a vaccine mandate for all colleges with exemptions for online, medical, and religious be respected and applied. Thank you.
Thank you for hearing both the negative and affirmative side of our debate over public college vaccine mandates implementation. I believe that the negative has won this debate with the recurring position that my team and I have demonstrated on the decision of pushing a vaccine mandate on those attending public universities in the U.S. As we've stated previously, the U.S. Constitution safeguards the right of Americans' privacy and personal autonomy. The Supreme Court has held that adults have the right to personal autonomy in matters relating to their own medical care and have the right to refuse medical treatment. Opposition to a vaccine mandate is not synonymous with skepticism towards the vaccine itself. As our side has stated before, definition of a vaccine is a substance used to stimulate the production of antibodies and provide immunity against one or several diseases prepared from the positive agent of a disease, its products, or its synthetic substitute, treated to act as an antigen without including the disease. According to Medical News Today, the average vaccine can take anywhere between 10 to 15 years to develop, and the fastest vaccine developed prior to the COVID-19 pandemic was the mumps vaccine. In contrast to this, the development and adoption of the COVID-19 vaccine in under a year highlights the potential gaps in our knowledge on the safety of the COVID shot. The Ad Council shares that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been shown to cause fatal blood clots and low platelets. Heart inflammation is another side effect experienced by the recipients of the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccines. These unexpected side effects, while relatively rare, illustrate our lack of understanding surrounding the potential side effects of the vaccines. A study published in the Journal of Adolescent Health by researchers at the University of California, San Francisco found that close to a quarter, 24% of young adults age of 18 to 25 express hesitancy about getting a COVID vaccine, with their most common concerns centering about the safety and possible side effects. Along with this, students that range from the age of 18 to 24 are not an at-risk group for COVID-19, even if they were. The vaccine itself is not like most other vaccines. It is not 100% effective, and you are still able to contract and spread the virus. Adding to that, even if the vaccine mandate was implicated, that would not include the booster shots needed 6 months after receiving the vaccine itself. Therefore, mandating the vaccine would be proven to be ineffective after a period of 6 months. Another article stated, an NBC News analysis of over 800 colleges and universities that are requiring the COVID-19 vaccine found that the vast majority have unclear directives, loopholes, or legal complications that are leaving professors frustrated and students unmotivated, and has robbed students of a traditional college experience. Online classes are not meant for everyone, and it should not be the only alternative to getting the vaccine. In conclusion, with a controversial topic, it is important to remember that the political division and short-sighted public hysteria do not always warrant the most extreme response. I'd also like to add that these points, when taken as a whole, serve to construct a compelling argument against the proposed adoption of a COVID-19 vaccine mandate for all public colleges and universities. While a controversial topic, it is important to remember that the political division and short-sighted public hysteria do not always warrant the most extreme response. Although it can be tempting to use brute force to solve a problem, it is not worth the many potential downsides that would be introduced in the case of vaccine mandate for public colleges and universities, especially when a more balanced, reasoned, and surgical approach may be more effective and feasible, considering that most college students are already vaccinated. Another little fact that I'd like to bring up is the compliance rate for the colleges of Brown, Harvard, and Dartmouth, and a few others. The first speaker of our group stated was that the compliance rate exceeded 90%. And just a point that we would like to make, that my third speaker said, that we're not against the vaccine mandate. We're not against the vaccine, we're against the vaccine mandate. And as they stated, their four speakers stated in their closing arguments that they said something along the lines of they're not for the mandate, but they're for the vaccine, and the mandate is a lawful way of forcing people to do one thing or another. So I'd just like that to be said. And then also I'd like to touch on the fact that the 90% compliance rate kind of serves to show that kids are willing to protect themselves and other people without being forced to do so. Yeah, like for you, myself, and everybody else, like, that'll be it. Thank you.